Welcome in, Tuesday edition, Clay, Travis, Buck Sexton show. Our good friend Sam Bankman-Fried, he of the $30+ billion fraud, has been arrested in the Bahamas one day after predicting that he did not think he was going to be arrested. So that is interesting. There is currently a congressional hearing going on. There are as many as 8 different felonies that have been levied against him as the indictment is just now being unsealed. And some of those counts include wire fraud, conspiring to defraud the United States, violating campaign finance laws. These charges coming from the U.S. Department of Justice's Southern District of New York. Buck, what stood out to me about the Sam Bankman-Fried arrest, which happened around 6 p.m. Eastern in the Bahamas, and there still will be a battle potentially over extradition. The prosecutors in the Bahamas are actually saying that he does not deserve bail because of fear that he might flee, which I think is a very real fear, because if he went to a country without an extradition treaty, frankly, I'm surprised he didn't already go there, Buck. I mean, I think I said on the show that I thought he would do it because I think there's a good chance he spends the rest of his life in prison.
We can add to our list of things you got to know even if you're not a lawyer. Remember, number one is never talk to the FBI. Not without a lawyer present. Doesn't matter. They knock on the door and say, we think you're a superhero and you're going to help us solve who killed Kennedy. You do not say a word, okay? You don't talk to the FBI. But we can add to that. If you think that maybe you need to be in a non-extradition country, you probably want to get there sooner than later because the wheels of justice, once they get you, it's very hard to get away.
I'm stunned that he didn't flee, Buck. I mean, it's a delusion on his part. I mean, he really thought that he hadn't committed a crime, maybe, but I can't believe that when this thing collapsed, he didn't flee. His
defense, and he almost remember, he was supposed to testify in front of Congress yesterday.
Today?
His defense at some level, today, but he said he wasn't able to make it yesterday because he was kind of busy. And I actually made a joke on Twitter. I said he's obviously Googling non-extradition countries, and then he got arrested about 4 hours later. So you could argue that Buck gets results. But the point about Sam Bankman-Fried's defense right now, I think the obvious direction is going to be that it's really actually a version of what the FBI said about Russia collusion. We were so stupid and so incompetent that you can't actually blame us for having a criminal state of mind. We didn't know. Sam Bankman-Fried is going to say, I took on way too much. And look, I don't think that's going to fly because you have a fiduciary responsibility. You have a basic ethical responsibility. If you're taking literal billions of dollars from people, yeah, some of them are sophisticated investors. Some of them are people who are working hourly jobs who thought that crypto was going to secure their future, right? I mean, this is... You got to think of who's being ripped off by all this. To take that money and say you're going to hold it in crypto, effectively operating as a bank, and then to put it into other things, including, Clay, this is going to be tough when they put this to a jury, assuming he doesn't take a plea deal, $250 million real estate portfolio.
Yeah.
And not as investment properties so much as handing them out to himself, his friends, his cronies, his parents. It's not going to look good, but he had one thing going for him all along. He bought off the elites across the board. He bought them off with money of retail, day-to-day crypto investors. And my understanding is that he even created a much bigger hole here by using the deposits to buy crypto and then buying up some of those crypto assets with money that he then used as collateral to then have even more access to capital. I mean, this guy created a vortex of financial destruction.
I think what's going to get him, Buck, is, first of all, there's going to be people testify against him. So as soon as they arrested him, one of my first thoughts was they've had people flip who are going to testify directly to his culpability to try to alleviate whatever legal issues they may have. I'd be stunned if they don't have some people already lined up telling the story. But what you just hit on is, I think, going to make his I didn't know what I was doing defense really difficult. It's one thing if you take billions of dollars and your company goes bankrupt. Unfortunately, that happens. There are people out there listening to us right now who have been through investing in companies. Maybe you even ran one that went bankrupt and had to be dissolved. It's a messy process, but it happens. That's the business risk. The business risk that no one knew they were taking, Buck, is that he was commingling in many ways, basically a hedge fund where he was able to place wagers based on the money that had been deposited with him in this FTX crypto universe. And I thought about, I was out to dinner last night, and we were talking about this some. Our friend Tudor Dixon, actually, Michigan governor's candidate, was in town. So I was out to dinner with her and my wife and several other people. And she's great, by the way. Wanted to say hi to everybody. Appreciate us having her on the show to help as best we could in that Michigan race. But, you know, when you actually break it down, Sequoia, which is among the most sophisticated venture capital funds anywhere in the world, based out in San Francisco. I think they were one of the first investors in Facebook, was maybe their first really monumental hit, if I remember correctly. They gave Sam Bankman-Fried $200 million. And his interview with them, he was playing, I believe, World of Warcraft, like an online massive player game, while that pitch meeting was going on. And so there is an element of, hey, you are such a disruptive force that you don't play by usual rules, that can be seductive in Silicon Valley. And I think he played that role to a T.
There's a lot of similarities you can draw with Elizabeth Holmes, who was going to create, she sounded like she created this fake voice. She sounded like one of the trees from the Lord of the Rings, She's like, I'm going to take all of your money and I'm going to revolutionize blood testing, walking around in a black turtleneck because she's trying to evoke Steve Jobs. She fooled some of the most connected, prominent, and supposedly wise people that you could possibly find. Former 4-star generals, General Mattis himself, which people, I think, have slightly competing views these days of Mattis in a variety of contexts, but served his country honorably. On the board of her company, $800 million of investor money went up in smoke over Theranos. She just got sent to prison for
11
number of
years, I believe.
And Sunny Balwani, I believe, her both boyfriend and really co-CEO, he got 14 years.
I think that's
right. They got hit pretty hard.
If you want a book, you read this book too, Buck. Bad Blood.
Yeah, it's amazing.
If you're around, it's a great book. If you're fascinated by SBF and you want to kind of get into this world and figure out what does a big fraud being perpetrated in the world of business look like, Bad Blood is a fantastic book to put on your Christmas wish list.
And it's one of these moments as well where you recognize that we have all of these regulations. I mean, anybody who's bought a house recently, you go through all this. You got to find, fill this out and that out, and background check and credit check, and under penalty of perjury, you got to fill out all this information all the time. And yet, when it came to setting up billions of dollars in what was effectively an entirely unregulated bank that was also working, as you pointed out, as a hedge fund or had a hedge fund arm, and was doing wild stuff, they could have figured this out sooner. This is the point of this that I think everybody should focus in on, except he gave $40 million to Democrats officially. Right, I'm going to get officially, because they're going to say, oh, but he gave money to Republicans too. Okay, look, Republican politicians can get bought off and can be scummy as well. Clay and I don't live in fantasy land here, but look at where else he put money. He put money in major left-wing media organizations. He wasn't giving money to Fox News, okay? He was giving money to, I think, Slate.com and The Intercept and these kinds of places, the supposed muckrakers of journalism online, giving money to climate groups, giving money to all kinds of left-wing causes to create effectively a shield of invincibility that would prevent anybody from really giving any scrutiny to what he was doing. He was meeting, Clay, with the regulators to tell them how the crypto industry should be regulated. And also, any normal person would sit down with this bizarre little nerd and say, why should anyone give you billions of dollars? It's astonishing. And, the elites that think they should be in charge of everything, the same people that tell you to triple mask and have the 5 Ukraine flags and to use preferred pronouns, at the very top of that apparatus, Clay, they thought Sam Bankman-Fried was a genius. The world's first trillionaire in the making, they said.
That's what they said. I also think this has to do with crypto itself because I think there's a lot of insecurity out there about crypto. And nobody wants to be in Silicon Valley the old guy who doesn't understand the new thing. So there were and remains, I think, a great deal of love for all these things that, frankly, to me, never made a lot of sense. Crypto never made a lot of sense. I understand it. I understand the concept of it. Didn't make a lot of sense to me. These non-fungible tokens, the whole metaverse, like I just don't buy into all three of these things that have been sort of the coin of the realm, for lack of a better way to describe it, in Silicon Valley.
Well, there's Bitcoin, which is the first and the one that has had the most widespread buy-in. And people always argue, well, what is a dollar really? A dollar is money just because people say it. Okay. But you need to get to that critical mass of everybody backs it. Everyone believes, and there is an infrastructure in place to ensure trust and to ensure the backing of a government effectively. This notion that you're going to create this entirely non-governmental currency, I think that's where some of this starts to fall apart. But Clay, people were creating joke coins, and then running them up. If you did this with a stock, if I created the Clay and Buck smoothie company to make delicious smoothies, and I made sure that I pumped and dumped, this doesn't actually exist, just so everyone's clear, but I pumped and dumped the shares of that small company, I would go to prison, right? It would be, but if I create the smoothie coin and tell everybody I think this is going to be the currency of the realm in the future, and I can run that thing to the moon and apparently not run into any trouble when people get completely wiped out. I mean, wiped out to zero. This is what has been going on left and right. By the way, I mean, Miami, where I spend a lot of time these days, it's really been kind of ground zero for this. A lot of crypto bros here, a lot of crypto stuff going on. And people are getting ripped off left and right. They really are. And it's amazing that they could see it at this level. Clay, literally billions of dollars. And no one even, no one ran a flag up on this guy. No one thought maybe we should look into what's happening here.
Well, not to mention, Buck, as we've said, they sold us on crypto as a hedge. And really, we got 10% inflation. I know it hit 7% today, but 7.1. But when you have double-digit inflation, this should have been the time when crypto took off. Instead, crypto has done worse than the stock market at large, worse than the S&P 500, worse than the NASDAQ, worse than the Dow. And that, my friend, is not a good sign.
Are you worried you might be detained if you stepped foot into the U.S.?
I don't believe I would be, but I haven't done a deep dive into that. At some point, that's something I have to think harder about.
Well, he's thinking hard about it now. That was Sam Bankman-Fried when he was asked just yesterday on a podcast, Unusual Whales, it's called, where he was asked, do you think you'd be arrested if you set foot in the U.S.? Turns out they saved him the trouble because he has been arrested in the Bahamas, and there is an extradition treaty between the U.S. and the Bahamas. This is a pretty remarkable situation that has played out here, and there are a couple of ways this can go, Clay. I think on one hand, you might have regulators in the apparatus. They can try to save face at some level and be like, oh, we would never want somebody who engages in this kind of fraud against, everyday crypto investors, throw the book at them, essentially throw them under the bus totally. Or maybe they kind of play along with, it's really complicated and he tried and he got in over it. You're going to hear over his head over and over again about this guy.
One thing I'm curious about, Buck, is the timing here on the charges being brought, because as you mentioned, he was scheduled to testify in front of Congress today. I think he bumped it back from yesterday. But they must have him dead to rights if they aren't any more in need of under oath comments from him that they could use in any sort of court proceeding. I'm a little bit surprised about it. They must have him dead to rights.
Well, it was a big sign that he continued to talk to the press and to speak about his situation even after the bankruptcy and it was all falling apart. Any lawyer would tell you and I'm sure his lawyers did, shut your mouth.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Don't say anything. But instead, he was out there like, look, it's been really hard and really been struggling with this one. And I think I maybe got a little bit ahead of myself. And, I just want everyone to feel sympathy for me. Will people feel sympathy for billionaire Frodo Baggins? I don't know.
That's such a good description of him. Also, the people who have not gotten very much attention in the media are people, a lot of whom lost their life savings that they had deposited with him. That is, those people are going to be testifying in these court cases, and to the extent that he's trying to feel like he's an empathetic or sympathetic figure, it ain't going to seem good compared to the people that lost millions and billions of dollars from him.